Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining Painting with Picasso's Grapevine. My name is Leanna Hahn, and I will be your teacher and host for today. Today we're going to paint this beautiful painting. This is kind of a selection of a couple of really cool trees just sitting out there in a meadow. And today we're going to kind of practice with a little bit of blending technique, which we do a lot. And we do this because blending really is the key to getting a very successful painting, learning to work with different colors, getting them to move together, getting that very nice contrast, that nice comparison, that nice complement. So we'll be doing that with our sky. We're getting some nice blending, and we'll kind of be working on our contrast down here in the foreground. So we are working with acrylic paints as always, and today we're going to have some fun with some very metallic looking paints. We're going to be working with a pearl color, which is kind of a little bit of an iridescent white. We have a silver. We have some white, we have some black, we have some red, and we have some phthalo blue. And we'll be doing some blending as well, kind of making up a nice color in between, this beautiful little maroon. As always, we have our cup of water. We'll be using this to keep our paintbrushes nice and moist. Today we have 4 paintbrushes. So we're going to be using our number 12. We have a number 6. I have a very small number 2 square, and I have a number 1. So let's go ahead, drop those into our water, let them sit there. And of course we have our dab rag, because this is what we're going to use to make sure we dab off any water before we go to the canvas. Again, we don't want to get any drips on our canvas that will peel off the paint. We can fix it, but we do try to avoid it. So to kick this off, I brought a blank canvas, and we're going to start with a blank one. And we're just going to work on the background a little bit. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and grab my very large brush. Let's go ahead, dab that off in our water. And we're going to work on combining our black and our white. And we're going to have a couple shades of gray here. I know the joke here is, there's roughly 50, but hey. And we're going to decide where our horizon line is. And I'm going to kind of just put that first line right across. At this point, it's speed painting. So we're just kind of going left and right, horizontal, and this is that technique of blending. Now we're going to move down the canvas very quickly. And again, I don't want you to really do a lot of heavy blending. I like to have that contrast. You notice we're going to leave some light and we're going to leave some dark here. We want to see that light kind of showing through at some point in our ground, and we want to show some darkness kind of showing through. Now the question begs, where do you show it and where do you not? And the answer is wherever you like. So this is not very specific, it's very vague. And we like those kind of paintings because it's really left up to the artist to decide where we're going to put those contrast points. And again, these are wraparound canvases, so don't forget to kind of wrap around your paintings. It gives you a nice option so that when you decide to put this on your wall, you don't have to have a frame. You can just stick it out there. It looks kind of nice. We get this nice blending technique when we move very quickly, and while our paints are still wet, we move down our canvas, and you can see you can get some really very nice coverage very quickly. And you notice I'm not doing a lot of blending. I may go up a little bit just to kind of create some smoothness across the canvas. I put the paint on, move it left and right, and then continue down. I'm going to introduce some more darkness down here at the bottom. Again, that's just my choice. You don't have to. If you want to keep it going light, you can choose to do so. And we're going to take that all the way down. Now for folks at home, again, you would pick up your canvas and you want to be able to make sure that you have paint going all the way around, including the bottom side of your canvas. So again, so you have that nice complete feel. And you notice I don't do a lot of strokes. It's very quick. It's just kind of a 1, 2, 3, zip, zip, done, move on. So I've got a nice comparison here, nice contrast. I've got some lights, I've got some darks, I've got a nice contrast going all the way down. So let's go ahead, dab off that big paintbrush, just kind of wash it off. And we're going to move into our sky. Now our sky, if you recall, had some really beautiful kind of blue areas here. And this has a really neat kind of pearl. So this is what we're going to introduce our pearl. To start off with that, I'm going to grab a little bit more of the white and add it to my palette here. Now we're going to introduce a very light baby blue. So I'm going to start with my white, add just a very light dab of blue. A little bit is going to go a very long way. And so we're going to decide, all right, here is where our blue is going to be. I'm going to start with a little blotch of blue. And I'll put a little blotch of blue here. Then I'm going to go ahead, wash off my paintbrush again. I'm doing this because I'm going to work around those two blue spots. I'm going to work around in my nice pearl and add that silver here and there. So this is just a kind of a push and smush, very technical here. Push and smush all the way around. Now we're not going to touch our blue areas yet. We will work on that. We're just going to lay down some paint and just kind of get that around the sky. You're not going to see too much of it right now. It's very iridescent. You can start to introduce very sparingly just a little bit of the gray, because we kind of have a very somber day. It's not a very bright day. It's not a lot of sun up in the sky. Now it's not a very hazy day either. It's kind of a somber day. It's kind of somewhere in between. So we're just kind of pushing and smushing, just getting our paint all the way around, laying it out right on the canvas. We're going to come close to our horizon line, kind of push down. Try to avoid touching it because that paint is still wet. If you get in there a little bit, you can always go over it and kind of fix it. But we're just going to go around and kind of place that. Now, once we've got our paint onto the canvas, now we're going to grab some more of this pearl and we're going to work on lightening up that blue and moving it out and kind of creating a little bit larger blue in our sky. You can add more blue if you like. This is going to be a very soft sky. Again, this is a very light dabbing approach. Again, that push and smush. And we'll do the same thing on this side. We want to create a very soft transition from the center of the blue out in towards the rest of the sky. So pretty soft, pretty easy. If you need to add a little bit more pearl, go ahead and do so. Need to take some of that blue off the page. Again, this gets to the point where you're happy with the results. If you want it darker, if you want to add more blue, go ahead and add more blue. If you want to add more pearlescence, go ahead and add more pearlescence. This is your preference on what your sky is going to look like. So I've kind of got this background ready to the point where it's ready to dry. So for you folks at home, you would give yourself an opportunity to just to take this probably about 7 to 10 minutes, set it aside and let it dry. Now I have brought with me another one that is at this point ready to move on, so we can continue. And what I'll do is kind of give you a little side by side. We'll see if we can kind of paint these together side by side so you can see the original, kind of keep that in perspective. We'll do that, kind of layer them over. Alrighty. So we've got our sky ready, we've got our bottom ready. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work on laying in our trees. So I'm only going to show you some of the trees. Again, that's how I kind of work. I give you guys some idea of how to do half of it, and then you can kind of finish out the rest at home. So with that, we're going to grab our very small brush, go ahead and dab it off. We're using black, and I'm going to start with that center tree. We're just going to draw out that center tree. It's very small, doesn't have a lot of height to it, so we're just going to draw it out. Now trees, as a reminder, trees are thin in the center. They broaden at the base. Pretty straightforward. I'll go ahead and do a couple more trunks just so you can kind of see how you're broadening into your tree, into your limbs. So we'll kind of bring one over. And we're going to add in a few limbs here. Let them kind of grow. Again, these are not complicated trees. They're very simplistic in nature, just to kind of get an idea. So we'll just do a couple of them. So then the next thing we're going to do, you notice that across the horizon line here, it's got a little bit of grass. So pretty simple, just kind of taking that number 1 brush, moving it across, just kind of moving it up. And this kind of fixes any of the paint that has kind of perhaps dipped into your bottom portion that you were working on in your skyline. And it just makes a nice smooth transition. Again, the stroke is very messy, just kind of randomly bringing it up and down all the way across the canvas, occasionally bringing them up a little higher here and there. It's just supposed to look like grass somewhere far away. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and move into our medium brush. This is our number 6. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of create some background to some of these trees. Now these trees have 2 layers. So acrylics, typically you have to build up in layers. They're very iridescent for the most part, and when you first put 1 layer down, so you have to build a couple layers to really get the depth and intensity that you're looking for. So this is a nice dome tree. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of do, just with the edge of our brush, kind of a rough outline of that dome. And I'm going to do a little bit of dabbing in here. And then the same thing with this one. So this one has a little bit less of a dome exactly. We're going to look a little bit more like a traditional tree. Now you notice every time I hit the canvas, I am changing the direction of my brush. You'll hear me say many times over and over again, not to do patterns because nature does not have patterns. We as humans typically will always try and do the same pattern. So we'll hit that canvas quite frequently in the same direction every time we hit it. So what I do is I kind of twirl the brush. So every time I come back down on the canvas, I have a different stroke. Kind of forces Now keep on going over and over, just to add depth. And we don't want to color it completely in. You do want to see light coming through. So the question begs, when do you know enough is enough? And the answer is, once it looks good to you. So some of these will kind of bring down in closer. We like to make some of these little leaves kind of stick out higher than the others, because that's how nature grows. It grows inconsistently wherever it wants. All right, let's go ahead and wash off that brush, and we're going to move into our foreground. And we're going to do a little bit of blending here. We're going to create some of this nice maroon color, and we're going to do that by adding the red and the blue. So we're going to start out with a little bit of blue. We're going to add some red to it. It's kind of a nice maroon wine color. So we're just going to keep on adding red into our blue until we get a nice color that we feel happy with. All right, so I've got a nice maroon. Now these particular streaks are exactly just that. They're streaks. So there's really no inconsistent or consistent pattern for this. It's where you feel happy and where you like it. So we're going to come across. Now what we want to do is we want to make sure that they are not straight. We do want to make sure that they are kind of wobbly, kind of wonky, kind of wobbly. Let them grow. Bring them across. Have some start in the middle, have some come across from the left side and branch over. Have them kind of start thicker, go a little thinner. The biggest message I can convey is make sure they do not all look the same, because that kind of strikes your eye weird and you'll wonder what looks odd to it. I can't figure it out. The next thing we'll do is we'll do the same process. We're going to grab some black and we're going to bring in some of our lines. I'm just kind of randomly deciding where do I want those lines to be. This is really just kind of emphasizing that there's some terrain out here. You can mix it right on top of some of that maroon. You can go under, whatever kind of makes you feel, your eye feel comfortable. Once you feel good with that, go ahead and wash that off. And you can see how quickly this really does move. We're going to grab our white, do the same process. Make sure that we are adding a heavy amount of white so you can see it show up. The only thing to caution on this is that you may have some blending or blurring between the two colors. So if you wanted to let this dry first before you apply the white, that may be a good course. If you want to just avoid the other colors and where you place the white, that may be a good course. So whichever you choose right now, I'm just choosing to avoid some of the other colors because they're active, they're very wet, and I didn't want to blend them in, although you may choose to. All right. And then lastly, it's got a little bit of blue, so I'm going to mix some nice baby blue again, going with that phthalo blue and white. I'm going to add some of that in here. You see how nice and easy this really kind of flows right across the canvas. There's a lot of room for error, so if you drop some paint here, if you don't like the way it turns out, you can quickly go right over it and change it. So once you feel good with your color selection down here in the foreground, go ahead, wash that off, and then we're going to go back up into those trees and finish off that center tree. We're going to be using that same brush, and we're going to use a dabbing approach. You see it almost feels like it's a little bit more of a thickness to it. So what we want to do is we're going to grab that red, and we're not going to do any blending. We're just going to lay it down. We may turn the brush at the top of the trees just so we don't end up with a solid dome feel. But we do want that nice dimpling because it's giving us a nice textured feel on this tree, and that's what we're looking for. There you go. Now for the rest of the trees, it's the same process. You've got one sticking out here over in the back. You're going to do a black undertone on this, and then come on top of it with white, just how we did with the red one. So same process. I hope you enjoyed this. This is kind of a fun one. As you can see, very quick, very easy. Lots of fun with the foreground, lots of fun with the background, something that you can kind of play with and enjoy. I hope you've learned something today from us. If you'd like to learn something more about these paintings, send us an email to info@picassosgrapevine.com. Thank you.